mobility is a basic human need. So of course, like today, thanks to the internet, it reduces a lot of mobility needs. But still, at the end of the day, as a race, without mobility, we are nothing.
Hey guys, welcome to Backstage with Millionaires. I'm Caleb, your host, and today the guest that we have on the show is Dhawal Khullar. He's one of the co-founders and the CTO of a company called Pravaig Dynamics, and what they've built is standing right behind me. This is the Extinction Mk1, which is a one-off prototype, but the actual production model that they're going to be creating that you'll probably see on Indian roads by the end of 2021 is called the Extinction Mk2. So it's taken you guys a pretty long time to get to this point. I think it's been, what, like
9 years. So we
9 years,
started back in 2011.
Right, 2011, okay. But back in 2011, was this what you had in mind? Was this the thing that you thought you would eventually end up building, or was it something completely different?
So yeah, back in 2011, things were different. And back then, like 9 years ago, like me and Siddhartha, we were quite young. And, it hadn't fallen into place to the level it is today. So yeah, initially we started out with building off-road vehicles. So Siddhartha, he used to have a car, but it was a family hatchback. So not the perfect vehicle to do off-roading with. And then we did consider a lot of products in the market, like Jeeps, Maruti, Gypsies, etc., etc. And good products, but really did not bring the bells with us. Reasons being, they were kind of uncomfortable, kind of slow, and we wanted to fix that. So yeah, we started to, let's just build what we want.
Wow, that's a really unconventional approach to solving a problem like that. I think most people would go the modification route. Maybe you'd buy a Gypsy, mod it so that it's a little bit more able to handle off-roading and stuff like that. But you guys just decided, hey, let's start from scratch, pretty much.
Right. And so yeah, to be honest, like initially we also thought that, okay, let's take something, modify it and, make it work. But we always have delved deep into the fundamental, that what is it doing and why are you doing. So for example, if you take an existing vehicle which is not at all nowhere designed to do something which we intended to do, then results would be kind of meh. Like it won't be the best of any world. So this first vehicle, it's called Abiogenisis, and so it's essentially a skeleton. It's a space frame with wheels. Essentially, that's what it is, and 2 seats. And we did define like what would be the seating positions, where does the cargo goes, and it's in that vehicle it's more like there is a specific cargo space, and like the entire bodywork is like you can tie down cargo wherever you want. It has a rollover hoop, so that in case things went south, so, we'll still be there to tell the story. But thankfully nothing like that happened, although yeah, a few unintended crash tests did happen. Came out okay, we are still alive, so yeah.
It sounds like it was more of just like a hobby project at that point. Like, were you guys working? You had jobs as well on the side and you were kind of building this thing on the weekends, or?
Right.
And then what was the moment where you decided that let's take this from being a hobby to actually kind of creating a company?
So when this first vehicle was built, of course, initially a few issues were there with the vehicle, and we fixed those, and we realized that it's not that difficult to build a vehicle, and it was something which we had created, and we were driving around, off-roading in it, reaching speeds of up to 120 kilometers an hour in that thing. So yeah, it really did boost our confidence that, okay, this is something which is doable, and this is something which we understand. So in fact, at that point, after that vehicle was done, we decided to start working on a low-slung sports car, a track car. So one critical challenge for us has been finding places to test our vehicles. So, it's not very easy to find places in India where you can test a low-slung sports car with barely 2 inches of ground clearance.
At this point in time, did you guys have a long-term vision? Like, did you know that everything would end up sort of culminating in the Extinction Mk2, or were you still kind of just testing the waters, seeing what you guys were even capable of?
One thing we realized early on is mobility is a basic human need. So of course, like today, thanks to the internet, it reduces a lot of mobility needs. But still, at the end of the day, as a race, without mobility, we are nothing. What we wanted to do back then, since back then, has always been to improve mobility solutions by as much as we can, and to simplify things, to make, in a way, in many cases, our philosophy has also been less is more. That you do more with less. And along the way, resources have been limited. So for example, if I talk about this vehicle, so the bodywork that you see, so all of this was done in-house, and this is the first vehicle this is our first prototype which actually has curves on the exteriors. So yeah, like we did not have a lot of experience on this, and of course, like even today, like there are things which can be improved. But yeah, we figured things out. We developed some processes which helped us achieve this.
And then after that vehicle, this sports car, what came after that? Did you guys go straight from that to the Extinction Mk1, or were there a couple of different iterations along the way?
So between these prototypes, so there have been 3 more prototypes that we have been working on. So one of them again is a track-oriented vehicle, and it's super low slung. It weighs around 200 kilograms, and again it is a flexible platform, and it's more like kind of like a go-kart with suspension, and super fun to drive. And it's good to understand. It's super good to understand dynamics, like how, for example, how do tires interact with the ground, how weight shift works, and it's a small fun vehicle. So yeah, that was there. After that, we decided. So one of the key things for automotives is reliability, long-term reliability, and we really needed to start building prototypes which can go through a lot of abuse. And like making cars for the roads, it's good, but like in India, it is a bit tricky to have. You really cannot just build a vehicle on your own and start driving it around. So yeah, which left us with the option of building off-road vehicles. One of the first vehicles we built on these lines was the T-Tex. T-Tex is essentially built, it's built on FIA T1 regulations. So essentially you can take it to Dakar Rally tomorrow, and it will pass scrutiny and you can go. And so this was primarily due to, motorsports, they have a lot of safety standards, and those safety standards are much stringent than what you'll have on a road-going car. So those safety standards take into account what happens if your vehicle falls off a cliff while doing Great the Himalaya. So yeah, that allows us a safe cocoon for the test drivers, which was me and Siddharth, yeah, this vehicle also had adjustable suspension, both front and back, double wishbone in the front, multi-link at the back, and we could change the setup, we could change the brake bias, we could also change the weight distribution again, and this vehicle you can drive at to 160 kilometers an hour on the highway, and if you are brave enough, at similar speeds in off-road conditions as well. So, and off-roading, it puts up a lot of stresses on the vehicle. And this vehicle, we broke a lot of parts, honestly. And while designing and executing these vehicles, and also while making the test plans, so we had to be careful about, like in a way you can tell that, if you build something, you can tell what the weak link is or what might break sometimes. And most of the times we were right that, okay, this will break. And it helps so that, say you're driving off-roading at 80 kilometers an hour on an unknown road and something breaks. So you need to know what to expect. If that thing breaks, say a rear suspension link breaks, what happens? And so yeah, it helps.
So you've, at this point, I think, what is it now? Like you've built 6 or 7 vehicles at this point before even the Extinction Mk1 comes into the picture?
Yeah, Mk1 is in fact the 6th prototype.
The 6th,
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And so this is serious, right? Like everything else that you had built up until this point, obviously a lot of time, a lot of energy, money, has gone into these vehicles. But I don't think the plan with those vehicles was ever to actually mass produce them, right? It was just sort of like one-off prototypes, whereas even the Mark 1 is obviously a prototype, right? But it's sort of paving the way for the Mark 2, which is going to be like, I think there's going to be, what is it? In the first year, you were planning on producing something like 2,600, was that the right number?
2,500 vehicles.
2,500, exactly. So that's going to be a big deal, right? So what all went into the Mark 1 from all of those tests before it? And also, what are the ways in which you've actually innovated on top of those learnings with the Mark 1?
Previous prototypes being off-road vehicles, and most off-road vehicles, they do not have a flat underbelly. You'll have things like a transfer case or something or the other, propeller shafts hanging down below. All of our vehicles since the beginning have had independent suspensions, long travel suspensions, and also underbody shields, always. And none of our off-road vehicles have ever been a four-wheel drive. And we have always achieved good results in terms of off-roading with just rear-wheel drive. And of course, parameters like weight distribution, where is the weight, where is the traction, balance. It is a balancing act, but yeah, we always had good results. And the aforementioned underbody shields, they also, we knew like down the line, and we have always been looking at vehicles as a whole. We have never focused on one specific portion of the vehicle to start with. Of course, like in the design process, you have to do this, but you start with the overall, you start with the bigger picture. And one thing we realized early on that for one of the secrets to good dynamics is you need to play your weight right. It needs to be at the correct place. And down the line, when we are making electric vehicles, so it made sense to us that to have our battery packs under the floor. And this allowed us a very good opportunity to test out the underbody shields. And our off-road vehicles, T-Tex, Exponent, these have a lot of battle scars on their underbellies. And you can have a look at their shields. They'll have deformations, but controlled deformations. And there are also critical systems installed behind these shields on these prototypes as well. But yeah, they had a pretty good survival rate. So again, this is one area which worked, which was it is actually a very critical requirement for Mark 1, Mark 2, or any EV that you might look at today. And also with respect to other areas like body in white, suspension. So yeah, down the line, our earlier prototypes, they worked. But so T1, for example, T-Rex, for example, it's a super hardcore race machine in a way, and you need to set it up, and it's really not built for NVH. It's a loud car. And Exponent, if you look at Exponent, it is, again, it's an aggressive machine, but in terms of NVH, there are a lot of improvements. So suspension noise is drastically reduced. And on similar lines, Mark 1 being an EV, like NVH was a big concern. And honestly, like we are still improving a lot of things for Mark 2. But like the components that we select for our suspension setups, and it's a vehicle which it's a test bed for all our technologies. So it's not a vehicle which we baby. Like we drive her hard, we drive her across various terrains. We will be like at multiple, like this one also has a lot of battle scars on our underbelly. So the shields work.
Now, has building the Extinction Mk1 as an electric car, has that actually been a difficult part of the sort of design process and the production process?
The way you package a vehicle, that plays a huge role. And in Mark 1, the way the batteries are packaged, or the electric motors are packaged, or the cooling systems are packaged. So, it is still a prototype, but it has still taken huge leaps in terms of longevity. And So, a lot of thought has went into Mk1 with respect to, so there are a lot of boxes which needs to be ticked. So for example, you need good aerodynamics, you need good efficiency, you need the vehicle to behave good in case it goes into a crash. And there are in emergency event we demonstrated what happens when a lithium ion cell explodes or it is ruptured. So yeah, those are safety. Safety has been a huge uh, a variable which we have kept in mind. And other than that, NVH also plays a huge role. So where do we place our motors? How do we package? How do we maximize the space available for the passengers inside the vehicle? How do we route the wirings? How and where do we place our battery management systems? And being a prototype, this vehicle, so an additional design constraint for this vehicle is it needs to be pushed to the limits, and which is why the form factor, it's a low slung sports car. Many people tell us that the ground clearance is way too low, but yeah, there are reasons for it. And inside the vehicle also, the way the interior is laid out, things are packaged, it allows us to swap a lot of parts. So say we are using a specific chipset for our battery management system, or a specific connector, and it allows us to change things and try out different parts, see what works better, log data.
I wanted to also touch on this global NCAP safety rating.
Right.
I'd read somewhere that it was it's going to be, the Mark 1 might be rated at 5 and the Mark 2 probably will be rated at 5. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay.
It is accurate.
Wow.
In fact, global NCAP ratings, to get a global NCAP rating, there are certain thresholds that you have to absolutely have. And but in fact, Mark 2 would be surpassing most of them.
Is that, I mean, that must have been born out of all of the previous experience that you guys have with building these cars that, like you had said, right, could potentially be tossed off a cliff, and they need to be able to withstand that kind of accident.
Right, in a way, yes and no. So, so for example, if I talk about T-Tex, it has a rigid roll cage, and it has got 5-point seat belts. So even if you are rolling down a cliff, you are safely tucked in your seat. You won't be crushed or anything. But still, the G-forces and all that you experience would be high. But in a car, it's not practical to have a 5-point harness all the time. You will be having a 3-point harness. It's simply not practical nor comfortable enough. So of course, like Mark II will be having seat belts with retentioners, a lot of airbags to cover all the sides, and yeah, we also have crumple zones front and the back. So having crumple zones are super important. They play a very important role in terms of crash safety. So yeah, like for Mark II, we are balancing these areas out very nicely. And also in our internal simulations, in the internal crash tests that we do, most of them digitally, we follow European NCAP regulations for those tests. And European NCAP regulations are one of the stringent in the world, and as a result, they have the safest cars in the world.
Wow. So this is something that I think not a lot of Indian car manufacturers are doing, sort of implementing these international and specifically European safety standards into their vehicles. So I think that's really great. But talking about the Mark II, I think a lot of people look at the Mark I and they think, oh, this is an accurate representation of what the Mark II is going to be like. But I think there's going to be a lot of changes, right? So maybe if you could touch on a couple of those, what do you guys actually plan on doing differently with the Mark II?
As with all Pravaig vehicles, the form, it comes from function. And this vehicle's form comes from its function, that it is a one-off prototype. It's a test bed for all our technologies, and it's designed to push everything that goes inside it. Mark II, as all of you are aware, it's built to be working as a fleet vehicle. And of course, this vehicle does not cut the count. So Mark 2 will be having 4 doors. It will be having higher ground clearances, and it will be having awesome NVH, including a super awesome audio system.
That's very important for
Yeah.
long rides. If you're going, for example, between the city and the airport here in Bengaluru.
Right. So you're guaranteed to have a good time. You'll never be wasting time in a Mark 2. So you're tired, you want to take a nap, okay, you can do that. You want to listen to some good quality music, you can do that. You want to work on your laptop, your computer, your phone, you can do that. You want to charge your devices, you can do that.
There's another thing that I've read, a lot of people have mentioned, which is the lights. I've seen a lot of comments about the lights. I personally am very fond of this strip across the front, but something that a lot of people have noted is that these lights here, they feel like they're quite small for such a big vehicle, and like you guys might not be able to tell just how big it is from watching it on a video, but like this thing is massive, right? So is there anything that you're going to do with the lights? Like, are you changing them at all for the Mark II?
Yeah, lights, in fact, each and every surface that you see here, everything is being optimized. And Mark II, like as I said, it will have 4 doors, higher ground clearance, but still, we are not, it will still share its fundamental DNA with Mark I. And many things like the lights, for example, they would be optimized.
Gotcha.
And there are also many areas which go in the back end. So, for example, in this vehicle, there are heat exchangers for the air conditioning systems mounted behind these grills. So if you look at this intake and this entire slot, so apart from the aesthetics, these parts are also serving to add certain functionality to it. And for Mark II, of course, the back-end systems, we are also, we are trying to extract the most efficiency out of them. We are trying to make them smaller. So yeah, these things would definitely have an impact.
So bottom line is the Mark II is going to be similar. It's not going to be a completely different vehicle, but there's going to be a lot of changes that are going to happen between the Mark I and the Mark II.
Yeah.
So you guys obviously have a lot of work to do between now, the beginning of 2021, and I guess the end of 2021, which is when you're planning on releasing the Mark II.
Right.
What all needs to happen between now and then for this vehicle to actually be launched in a couple of the cities here in India?
So right now, a lot of testing is going on in the backend. And of course, like as we test things, so minor ECNs do happen, engineering changes, upgrades. And also we are working with a lot of our vendors with whom we will be manufacturing these parts and assembling these parts as well.
And just sort of touching again on these vendors as you were describing, I know this is the Mark I, which is probably there's maybe different parts that are involved, maybe perhaps different vendors, but specifically talking about the Mark II, I just want to really explore this topic or like make sure that it's clear. 2 questions. One, approximately what percentage of it will be, the Mark II will be made in India and designed in India, created in India, and what percentage of it will be from outside of India? And the second question is there any part of the vehicle that's made in China?
So to answer your first question, so more than 80% of this vehicle is being built locally, like body in white, suspension, wheels, tires, and paint. The battery packs, we are building them in Bangalore itself.
In-house, yeah?
In-house. And secondly, to answer your second question, honestly speaking, in today's world, it is, and for Mark II, there are some components which are being built in China. So it's not necessary that these vendors are fundamentally from China, but like today, China is kind of unbeatable when it comes to costs for the vendors, or it is the manufacturing hub today. And so yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, there are a few parts which are the factory is located in China, so
Sure.
Can't help it.
Okay, yeah, but I just wanted to get that out there so that there's no confusion with people. So this does sort of like this is a controversial topic, and a lot of people just hate the fact, if you say that any part of the vehicle is made in China, people are going to be upset about that, right? So I wanted to sort of address that, or kind of like delve into the why. Like what why did you guys decide to do that? I know you'd said price, but I think there's a lot of Indian vehicle manufacturers who source parts from China, right? You're not the only ones. Probably you're not even in the minority, right? I think this is like a majority thing where people are getting stuff made in China all the time, right? So I really wanted to know, why is that?
So today, like when you say that you want to build a EV in India, so it's not. There are a lot of specific parts that need to be taken care of, and those parts, they take a certain amount of time to develop and to test and to validate and to start producing. So it does, this is one of the main reasons, like as per me, that it is available right there. It is available at a reasonable price, and each OEM also pays a certain price for these parts. And yeah, so that is the way it works. But definitely down the line, it is, and I see it already happening. So a lot of Indian vendors are pushing for a lot of technologies specific to EVs to be built in India. And down the line, I also see a very good opportunity for Indian vendors to, there is going to be a huge demand. Pravaig, others, the whole world is transitioning into electric vehicles. So definitely there is going to be a huge demand, and we do need to buckle up our manufacturing capacities in India. Engineering and design is good, like that is phenomenal, but things need to be made here.
But the question that sort of begs the question of like, why aren't they being made here, right? And I think what I would ask, based on what you said, is like, what's stopping you guys, right, from building some of these things? Because I know you described sort of the fact that it's maybe it's expensive, right? Or maybe it takes too much time. Maybe you guys don't have the resources at this stage to actually create these systems and these like sort of sub-products, right? Maybe like it's a specific part of the battery, maybe it's a specific part of the seatbelt system, maybe it's whatever it is, right? Is that mainly why you've decided instead to outsource these products instead of building them in-house?
So in fact, most of these products, we are in fact, so if we talk about the battery packs, for example, so we are building the entire battery packs in-house. They are 100% made in India.
It's just the cells that are from outside.
Yeah, and cells are not from China. And there are certain aspects, like, there are certain connectors which are utilized in EVs. They might be sourced out of China. And it's just that, the vendor might be American or Korean, but it so happens that their manufacturing line, it is based out of China, because China is already a huge market for them. And of course, down the line, localization of parts is something which we are very, very serious about. But sometimes you do have to look at it from the time versus your timeline.
All right. Well, hey, it's been a really long and amazing journey so far. I guess a decades-long journey up until this point. But I feel like this is really just the start in a way, right? So much has happened up to get you guys to this point. But the Mark II is really, in my view, it's sort of like the real start of Pravaig Dynamics becoming like a name that Indian people actually know and a name that people talk about, right? So I'm really excited to actually get to the point where I'm seeing Mark IIs on the roads of India. I'll be walking down the street and I see one passing me by, or even taking a ride in one someday soon. So that's what I'm really looking forward to. I'm sure you're also looking forward to that day.
Yep.
But I really appreciate you taking the time to share specifically the product story of Pravaig. How did you guys actually get to this point? And I wish you guys all the best moving forward. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sheila. Great to have you here.
Definitely.